Actually,
Like that?
Yeah, that's fine.
am I gonna be too hot?
It's cooler out there.
No, I mean
Oh,
vocally.
no,
Okay.
we can do that.
Okay.
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, big chairs.
Okay.
Wow, what a nice natural end to the conversation. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming out here tonight. My name is Tiffany, and I'm the Marketing and Events Coordinator here at Books of Magic. We are so excited to have Amanda Hess and Wesley Morris here with us tonight to celebrate Second Life, having a child in the digital age. But before we get started, I wanted to point out some logistics for how tonight's event is going to go. If you need to use a restroom at any point, the door is located right next to the Moleskin Spinner on the right side of the room. We'll be doing hand-raised audience Q&A toward the end of the discussion, so start thinking of questions to ask and hold on to them tight. After the talk tonight, Amanda will be signing in personalized books at the table next to where you checked in. We will let you know where and when to line up for that. If you are joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we'd love to encourage you to buy a copy of Second Life online using the link in the live stream description. Second Life. As an internet cultural critic for the New York Times, Amanda has built a reputation among readers as a sharp observer of the seductions and manipulations of online life. But when Hess discovered she was pregnant with her first child, she found herself unexpectedly rattled by a digital identity crisis of her own. In the summer of 2020, a routine ultrasound detected a mysterious abnormality in Hess's baby. Without hesitation, she reached for her phone looking for answers, but rather than allaying her anxieties, her search sucked her into the destabilizing morass of the internet, and she was vulnerable, more than ever, to conspiracy, myth, judgment, commerce, and obsession. As Hess documents her escalating relationship with the digital world, she identifies how technologies act as portals to troubling ideologies, ethical conflicts, and existential questions. And she illuminates how the American traditions of eugenics, surveillance, and hyperindividualism are recycled through these shiny products for a new generation of parents and their children. At once funny, heartbreaking, and surreal, Second Life is a journey that spans a network of fertility apps, prenatal genetic tests, gender reveal videos, rare disease Facebook groups, free birth influencers, and hospital reality shows. Hess confronts technology distortions as they follow her through pregnancy and her son's early life. The result is a critical record of our digital age that reveals the unspoken ways of our lives are being fractured and reconstituted by technology. Amanda Hess is a critic at large for the New York Times. She writes about internet and pop culture for the arts section and contributes regularly to the New York Times Magazine. Hess has worked as an internet columnist for Slate Magazine, an editor at Good Magazine, and an arts and nightlife columnist at the Washington City Paper, and has served as the second vice president for the News Guild of New York, a union representing media workers. She has also written for such publications as ESPN, The Magazine, Wired, and Pacific Standard, where her feature on the online harassment of women won a National Magazine Award for public interest. Wesley Morris is a critic at the New York Times who writes about art and popular culture. So without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to these two.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Tiffany. Okay, I'm going to just start by reading a few pages of the book. If I can open to it. This is from the introduction. I did not know that anything was unusual until I was 7 months pregnant. This week your baby can cry, my pregnancy app said. Yes, in the uterus. I waited in the lobby of the prenatal imaging center, stroking my phone until I depleted its stock of inane facts. My baby cried inside my body for the same reasons that it would cry outside of my body, like if they hear a loud noise or are bothered by something, the app said. Just as you might be starting to prepare for their arrival, they're constantly preparing for life in the outside world. The app handed me a drawing of a frowning baby, a teardrop slipping down its cheek. Inside the exam room, the technician wore a stumpy ponytail and an annoyed expression. I wore a sheet of paper with armholes. She dimmed the lights and stood astride her mysterious station. I could see plastic scepters and orbs, a basket of serums, a keyboard with hieroglyphic markings. The technician unsheathed her wand. She slathered cold gel on my skin and worked her probe into the hard rind of my stomach. I assumed various poses at her command. bobbing and craning my neck to keep one eye focused on my young. On the screen, static rained on little ribs and fists. As a technician worked, she offered selections from her trove of professional small talk. Do you know the sex? Have you picked a name? I wanted to slice her out of the scene, to watch my baby with silent focus, but I also wanted to seem normal and good. So I told her the baby was a boy without a name. Then she said, he's sticking his tongue out. So I said, aw. The technician fussed with the machine. She twisted its dials and clacked at its keys and then left the room. The gel grew thick on my skin. I missed my phone. I wondered if there were any new work emails in there. When the technician returned, she ordered more poses, captured more shots. I had reported to the doctor's office for a routine scan, but as in a dream, the routine kept repeating. We passed the plausible length of a standard procedure, then lapped it. Again, the technician left the room and returned. The doctor is busy with another patient, she said. That's why it's taking so long. I might as well get more photos while we wait. On her live stream of my body, she conjured a craggy amber landscape, a cave of mineral spires. I asked her what it was. An ear, she said. Weird, I said. My bright tone hung awkwardly in the darkened air. The technician's store of conversation was picked clean. She now communicated in the perfunctory style of a deposition, answering only when strictly necessary. I searched her glassy eyes for clues. Were they always fixed so intensely on the screen? Dread pooled in my brain and danced in liquid shapes. Stupid, stupid. The doctor was not with another patient, and the technician was not taking more pictures for fun. I watched her map my baby's ear for secret reasons. When she directed me to lie on my side, I gratefully accepted. I turned my back to her and the monitor. I turned my back on my baby. Later, I would read a report of the ultrasound and learn that the phase of the examination had lasted for 1 hour. For an hour, I lay on the table playing dead. I imagined that if I could stay completely still, the skeletal hand of complication might pass me by. It would crack the door to the next ultrasound room and tap on some other pregnant body. The moment would slink away like so many of the anxious thoughts that had visited me during my pregnancy. I was always anticipating the worst, imagining the plane dropping from the sky, the shooter breaching the office door. Soon the doctor would arrive smiling, apologizing for the delay. The technician would hand me a roll of keepsake photos. I would escape past the reception desk and rise through the elevator into the sun. I think I'll stop there.
So I'm going to stop writing for the week. Maybe for the year, thank you. But your reading that brings up two things for me. Well, of a number of things. But first of all, I have a very clear moment, maybe a year ago. You would come to work. Amanda and I sit a desk apart at the office. And I don't know, you seemed distracted. And I had assumed that, you know, this was, you had to get home to do some family stuff. And we were talking about like the work we were doing. And you whispered to me. Do you remember what you whispered to me?
No, I don't remember anything.
I'll never forget it because it really touched me. And well, whatever. What you said was, I really can't wait to go home and work on this book. It's the only thing I want to write right now. And I just really understood what you meant. And reading this, I mean, the sentence work is great. The vividness of the details are great. We talked backstage a little bit about something I wanted to read. I will not do it. because I actually don't read as well as you do. I want you to read everything I write. But I'm curious about whether or not, well, what you knew before about pregnancy, before you were carrying a child, and what you thought it was going to be like, versus what the experience of this book turned out to be.
I mean, I really didn't know anything. And I knew that a person grew inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
But when it started happening, I was like shocked. It was not like it was a planned pregnancy and everything. But that is, that had never happened before to me. And it's like, I don't know, I felt like every decision that I was making, like I was comfortable with the idea that I made bad decisions for myself sometimes. But now I was like making physical decisions for like two people. And so that really shook me, I think. And I wanted to do it correctly to the extent that that's possible.
I was going to say, to the extent that you can control what correct even is.
But it seemed like I remember thinking that it's unfair that you need, or you're expected to like act like you're pregnant like before you would even know the signs would even and then like it's kind of like more important to avoid certain things earlier in pregnancy than it is later. And I didn't think that was fair either, because I was like, well, after studying for 9 months, like now I know, like it's very easy for me to avoid taking a hot bath or whatever. So yeah, I don't know, even though like I was an adult person.
I mean, I guess I'm asking because there's so much pregnancy culture, but most of it's a lie. Or, okay, it's not a lie. Okay, it is a lie. But I think the place it comes from is to sort of make it palatable in some way. But the thing that I really appreciated about your depiction and reliving of this experience is that almost nothing about the system seemed like the hospital system seems capable of making pregnancy anything other than unpleasant. They are not really there to comfort you. And I'm saying this as the brother of a person who used to work in labor and delivery. And she would tell me some stories where I'm just like, but this is a person carrying a child. Like, what? Y'all can't do anything to make this pleasant for the parent. So I was really astonished by that. But I'm curious, can you just talk about the ways in which this experience maybe changed your relationship to your phone? Because, obviously one of the things you're doing here is talking about an entire culture related to being pregnant that kind of exists out of sight and digitally. But where are you now with your phone? And where are you now with like using the internet for information?
Yeah, I mean, so before I was pregnant, I was using this app Flow to track my periods.
Boo!
I don't use it anymore, but it's for kind of unrelated reasons. But I was using it, I would only need to really use it once a month. And I was using it just to know when my period was going to come, because I would feel really bad emotionally for the like 24 hours before then. And I would be like, why is this happening to me? So then I would know why. But then once I was pregnant, Flow became like my pregnancy app. And the whole like mood of the app changed from this kind of like adolescent diary to this like disciplinary program for like new mothers. And I was surprised by just like how intimate my relationship with my phone became. Like there's this CGI fetus that Flow conjures for you. And it's, it looks like it's kind of like floating in outer space. It's really cute and it's not covered in like human guts. It's just
Right.
like floating independently. And then it would be like in my hands as I was looking at it. And I realized once I had this ultrasound that I described in the beginning of the book, I realized that there were certain features about my son that were different. And they were not reflected in the CGI fetus that's in Flow. And I was like pissed. It was like I felt betrayed that they had presented this image to me as if it were like looking inside my body, and in fact, obviously, like it doesn't see anything.
And communicating with you as though it actually did know.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, I think, I mean, the reason that my relationship was so intense at that time is that like I would like talk to my phone about anything that I didn't want to talk to a person about. And that was just like stuff that I felt shame about or that I was like really scared about. And I didn't want to like scare my husband also by bringing it up or whatever. And so, you know, I was just feeding it all of my insecurities. And like, you know, it has like uses for those things.
But it felt like at some point the app was, I don't want to say using them against you necessarily, but I think the makers of this thing kind of understood that you might have developed a need for it. And there's this great moment in the book where you and Mark, your husband, kind of fast forward to watch the baby become a person before the app wants you to. And that just felt like such a Truman Show hack against the sort of pregnancy app industrial complex.
My husband was like, I feel like we're in a Ben Lerner novel.
Yeah.
And I was like, should I use that? But then I was like, is everyone who reads my book going to know who that is? But yeah, it was really weird. And talking about it is so strange because like, it's not like the animation of the fetus is like super great. It's so dinky and like kind of stupid looking, but it's like I bonded with it in some way.
Well, I mean, part of it is the warmth of it, right? Like it's telling you the size of your you know, future child. Is it like fruits and vegetables?
Flo used that. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a very strange experience. And again, I had no insight into, but once you're in there, you know, the internet becomes this wild place, and you seem very uncertain about whether you want to maintain a relationship with it. There's a moment I think where oh, God damn it. I've got it here.
Oh, it's under here.
There's just so many great lines in this book. And I brought most of them or a few of them with me. This is not, oh man. Oh, there's the cutting up your poop.
Yeah.
The most creative thing I did during pregnancy, and all it produced was shit. There was a line like that. I want to talk about free birthing though, because that's some of the wildest writing you do here. This is the experience of just going rogue on the hospital system, another industrial complex, to join, I would say, the health nut industrial complex. With all due respect to any free birthers in the room. Did you ever really seriously consider just not doing it through a hospital in this way? I mean, first question.
I mean, there was a moment after I had this ultrasound where I had like a much worse ultrasound where a doctor was like, I think there may be like an abnormality with the brain. And I had to get an MRI, which looked at the fetal brain. And it turned out that it was like completely normal. But in that week that I was waiting for the MRI appointment, I was like, I should just go to the woods and take care of this myself, because I was like 29 weeks pregnant or something. And like, I wasn't even sure if I could ask my doctors about an abortion in New York because it was not. I wasn't sure if that was like if that would put them in a weird position legally for me to talk to them about it. That was just no. The answer is no. I didn't really think about that, but I became fascinated by the people who did that.
This is why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because at first it seems like a rational choice.
Yeah.
It seems at first like this is a thing that I kind of understand why a person would want to do. And then you find the exact right people to change your mind. Can you talk a little bit about finding and sitting down with some of these people?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think like what interested me about them was that they were doing something that I knew that I could never do. And once my my son was diagnosed with a rare genetic condition while he was still a CGI fetus. And so my husband and I were able to like prepare for his birth and assemble doctors who would be able to like meet him. And I was confident in those decisions, even as like the experience of becoming a medical subject and having him become a medical subject before he was born was like awful. And so I think I got this like escapism from listening to a podcast where women are like, my wolf dog was the only other entity who was in the yurt or whatever.
An actual wolf dog.
Yeah. And I was fascinated with them because I was like, this is not something that I imagined that I would think about myself before I became pregnant, but I was like, there's something, and especially after I gave birth and I ended up having a C-section, I was like, there's something about my body that's not made in the ideal way. And these women are so confident in the superiority of their bodies. And that just really fascinated me.
And yet, the things that can go wrong in these situations, which you document, seem not worth the risk. And yet, the way in which that confidence is now in the government is fascinating to me. Like, I mean, I don't know if RFK has a position on free birthing, but
I hope he doesn't find out about it.
He definitely knows. There are definitely people who've probably had children this way working for him right now, and we're going to expect us all to do it. Well, not me. Another great portion of this book involves the gender reveal. And I think as a reader of you, I don't know what I'm ever going to get from you, which is one of the pleasures of the Amanda Hess reading experience. But I would have to say, if I needed to know anything about anything from your perspective, it would probably be what a gender reveal is and how they work. And I am gonna read your gender reveal bit. Can I do that for you? To you? This is on page 50. The gender reveal. Hold on, I need some water. Sorry. The gender reveal animated a lonely bit of genetic data into a scene. The fetus did not have a body of its own, but it already had an outfit. Once this was a feminized practice, a baby shower activity styled for Pinterest. But then it became a guy thing. There were gender cannons, gender pipe bombs, gender tire burnouts primed for TikTok and YouTube. The aesthetic was America's funniest home videos meets terrorist beheading. Thanks for finding the comedy in that. But how do you think this, because there's a story that you tell of a man who, like an internet video, I think a TikTok video of a father who finds out he's having a third daughter.
He's so mad.
The masculinization of this experience is fascinating to me. What do you think is going on there?
I mean, I think I came across a lot of technological solutions that seemed like they were meant to market some kind of authority over the pregnancy or newborn to men
Mm-hmm.
who maybe
Mm-hmm.
felt like they didn't have like
Any-
a natural
Mhm.
authority, and so like putting it through some kind of spectacle or often like data collection activity, I think can masculinize it in that way, and it's like kind of touching that I think men are being drawn into like the commodification of pregnancy
Touching
a
it
little
first.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also, I ended up talking with my friend who was pregnant like a couple of years before I was, who told me, she told me that like the sex of the child, she was like, this was pretty early in her pregnancy. And I was so confused at the time before being pregnant. I was like, why did you want to know that?
Mm-hmm.
And she explained that like she got so many prenatal tests during pregnancy that are all about like medical conditions, and instead, like, to me, I always thought that the gender reveal meant that you think the sex of the baby is like the most important thing. And she was like, the reason I wanted to know was because it was the only thing that did not seem important. It was
Mm-hmm.
the only information that I got beforehand that did not seem very important. And I think after I got, I used to watch like gender reveals like this, even ones that like started horrific forest fires,
Right.
and I would be like, ha ha ha, like, what? Look at these idiots.
You write that you tweeted after one of these started a forest fire, essentially, boy or girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said you would never do it now,
I
but
know.
before you became a parent, you lit the internet up.
I know. I wanted the story to like tell you if the gender reveal was like pink smoke or blue smoke, and it didn't say, and it was like annoying. But then after I had this experience where I like really I got some genetic information before my child was born, and I really terrorized myself with it, and I made it occupied like a space of importance to me that ended up like not really having much of a relationship to like what my actual experience of my son was like. I felt like I shared something with those people who had like just like tried to like find something, funny or interesting out about their future baby and had like caused some disaster in their life. I felt like I had done that after I got that ultrasound.
I want to talk about one of the most amazing characters in your book, and it's your husband.
He's here tonight.
This is a person I know, and I think that there's something about watching him go through this in a direct way, but also in a secondhand way. And it's very moving how present he is. Like, I mean, for you, not so much as a character in the book, but also as a character in the book. But I'm wondering what you learned about him that he seems like the person, this is how I would expect Mark to handle this entire experience, but I don't know that you necessarily knew how this would go on his end.
I mean, Mark and I have talked about how we don't think he's a real character in the book. And there's
because he wants to be more of one, or you think he is one, and
I think he's comfortable with the
disagrees?
amount of character, but it's like we both know that like he doesn't set anything into motion. I don't know. It's just like
I think he sets a lot of shit into motion.
That's true. He did get me pregnant. But there's this point in the book where I describe him as a non-player character in the MRI video game, and I did that. I would not have used that descriptor if I knew that like Elon Musk says that about people. That was not a thing, I think, at the time that I wrote that. But he, we talk about how he's kind of like a non-player character in my book. He's
waiting outside in the parking lot as you go through this.
Yeah, he's waiting outside. But I think, going through the experience of like not just pregnancy and birth, but researching all of the culture around it and how gendered it is. Like, I just feel so lucky that my husband is someone who, like, not only is he like an involved father or something, but like specifically he like handles like 99% of like the medical stuff.
Mhm.
Like he keeps our appointment calendar and he knows like when we need to go to the children's hospital and all of that stuff. And he's just simply like much better at that, and I think maybe wired in that way than I am. And I think, I don't know, I read so many books that are about motherhood, that where there's this big drama between like the woman and the man in a heterosexual relationship, where the man is like not doing enough, and that means that this woman like can't do her art and stuff because she has to like make pancakes every morning. And I just like, I know that's like really frustrating and awful, but I'm just so glad that on a creative level, like I didn't have to write that scene, because I feel like I read it so many times because unfortunately, like it keeps happening. So, yeah, he's great.
What about your? I'm thinking about you going through this experience, and you still have your mother in your life.
She's also here.
Did she? What was your relationship? I mean, you're turning to the internet for some things. Was there any conversation that the two of you were having about her experience giving birth, carrying children, while you were going through this really difficult experience on your end?
I mean, I spoke with my mother-in-law on the phone, and she was like a great sounding board for me as I was like crying on the phone to her about all of this stuff happening.
Because there's no pregnancy apps when you were
Yeah.
in there.
Although my mom told me at a certain point, like I interviewed her a little bit for the book, and she told me that she could have figured out like the sex of her children, but like in 1983 and 85 when we were born, but decided not to. So it was like a surprise when it came out. But yeah, I mean, I actually like my mom. I hope I'm not revealing too much. Like, she had a C-section when I was born and when my brother was born, and yet like I was surprised when I had a C-section. I wasn't like,
Well, this is in the book.
Yeah, like, oh, maybe that would happen to me too, since I, I'm probably like built in some way, similarly to my mother. I just think, I don't know. Like, I think I was still, in so many ways before I had kids, like felt invincible in some sense. And then I was like, oh shit. I just assumed that I was like gonna push this baby out, and it just didn't happen.
What are some things that you were actually surprised were true or not true about you? I mean, we talked about Mark, but I mean, what about you? I mean,
just like how I think something that happened during my pregnancy is once I became pregnant, I started like taking screenshots and notes about the things that I was seeing online and like thinking about writing about it in some way. And then when I had this ultrasound that I describe in the book, like late in my pregnancy, I had such a superstitious feeling, like by writing down, because I was like writing down these like funny jokes about like my poop and stuff, and I was like, this is so funny, and it's like so funny.
I just read a funny poop line.
When these like gender reveals are so funny and stupid or whatever, and then when my pregnancy became complicated, I had this feeling like I had created this somehow by being glib in my note taking about the pregnancy. And I am not a superstitious person. And so I think just having that sense that I had like willed this to happen in some way was strange. And I was like, I obviously like can't write about this. And then a few months later, I understood that like me having this feeling of superstition that was so bizarre to me meant that I should probably figure out why I did feel that way.
We're going to turn it over to the questions from the room, but I will say before we do that what you just said reminded me. I mean, of one of the pleasures of reading this book after experiencing your writing in other places is I think that this is a great form for your intelligence and the way that you see the world. And I think that, I mean, reading about you discovering this protector aspect of yourself, I think is really moving. And there's a moment where you don't need the phone for answers anymore. It's not explicit, but I feel like there's a moment in this book where like you learn how to trust yourself in what to me seems, based on the person you begin the book as being, in a new way. So I don't know. That was part of my experience reading this.
That makes me feel good about myself.
Well,
Thank you.
you can put your check in the mail. Questions from anybody in the house? How are we going to do this? I think this place, well, for the live stream, I guess I'm going to Phil Donahue it. Oh, we're good? We're good? No Phil Donahue? Oh, I will Phil Donahue. Okay. All right. Wow, I am Phil Donahue. There's a chord. Where am I going? Can I make it? Oh, I'm going to make it. Oh, that's true. I don't know what's wrong with me. What's your question? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Hi.
One of the most interesting parts of the book for me was how you go into all the technology of babyhood that's marketed to parents, and all the gadgets and everything. And I was wondering if you could talk about some kind of gadget or device that perhaps especially spooked or repelled you when you were learning about it.
A gadget that you experienced during your pregnancy that spooked or repelled you.
There's this sock that you can buy for your newborn that's called the Nanit. Wait, no, that's the camera. The Owlet. They're all. It's hard to keep track, but it feeds the baby's like oxygen saturation levels to your phone, so you can monitor like if they're breathing correctly. And I think I have such complex thoughts about this device because my son ended up coming home from the hospital with like an actual medical device to help him make sure that he was breathing correctly while he was sleeping. This is something that he'd been kind of like hooked up to in the hospital, and then when we went home, Mark and I were just expected to like administer it ourselves. And the doctor in the hospital, there was like a pulse oximeter, and we asked the doctor if we needed that at home, and they were like, no, like it really doesn't work anyway, like it would just fall off. And so I never knew if it was working. And if I had known that there was this commercial sock that I could buy, I definitely would have bought it. But I'm glad I didn't know it existed, because I mean the thing I think that bothers me about the sock is that it's simultaneously marketed to parents of children who have some kind of complex medical need, and also parents of children who don't. And the stories of children with these needs are sort of used, I think, to spook any parent into thinking like, well, better safe than sorry. Better put this medical device on like a, totally healthy infant or whatever. And then once we got rid of our like actual medical device, I was so happy to get it out of there. And so the idea that it's like desirable to bring more medical equipment into the nursery, I think is a little strange.
I mean, one of the things that comes up in the book is just the ways in which the industrial complex wants fear is like a good selling point. They want you a little bit scared all the time. And here's a product to like make you feel a little bit better about this unknown thing.
Yeah, and I think there's just no. I mean, it's possible that someday there will be, but there's no like research to suggest that it prevents like SIDS or something like that. But the marketing implies that perhaps it could do that.
Mm-hmm. Who else? You there.
One thing I find fascinating is the way pregnant people use the forums on these apps. Like the line between support system and echo chamber
This
does
is
not exist. And I'd love to know how that. I'd just love to hear you talk about that in general and like these forums being places where people will just really complain about mother-in-laws, husbands, and it gets really kind of like claustrophobic and a little insane, a lot of these conversations. And so I'm really curious to hear you talk about that and how it impacted you, what you make of it. Just would love to hear you talk about that.
What has your experience been like, or what are your thoughts on the pregnancy forums?
I loved this forum that was in Flow that's called Secret Chats, where you're like put in contact with other pregnant people around the world who are like the same level of pregnant that you are or whatever. And I loved it because it algorithmically like grouping people by pregnancy week, but not anything else is like really interesting because then you're like sort of like talking with people who are not like you, and that's cool. But I think one of the things that I didn't put together was like I was going to the internet to like put all my fears into it, but then when I was reading other people's notes, I wasn't like, well, this is like the craziest version of this person. I was like, this is what a normal person thinks. So we're all sort of like operating on some weird level, I think, of our psyche with one another. And then also there are some forums that like I would find forum entries from like 15 years ago. Especially after I had this ultrasound, I was like so deep Googling. I was like looking for anyone who had ever gone to the internet and said I had an ultrasound where the tongue was sticking out. And then I was like looking and looking, and they were from like 15 or 12 years ago. And there's like one thread where every few years someone came in and was like, so did you ever figure out what that was? But then the people never like came back to explain what happened. And of course, like it's not like I went back and I was like, listen, this is what happened. Like it's fine, but this is so
You could be that person. It occurs to me.
Yeah, I just like I don't have the time to like go back to all of them. But yeah, I don't know. They're operating on some, I think, different psychological level than I initially realized.
I was also surprised, to your question, that when you talk about these forums in the book, or at least the ones that happen in the app, right? The language you can and cannot use as you're talking about these experiences. I don't know if the words are, I don't know if it's forbidden language, but it strongly encourages that you not speak about certain ideas with respect to your pregnancy.
Yeah, in Flow, like there are rules against like bringing politics into the chats, but also any like potentially identifiable information of you. So you can post a picture of like your bare stomach, but not if there's a tattoo. In case randomly I'm like, oh, that's Sharon or whatever. I don't know why this is like a concern to them, but
because privacy clearly isn't. It's like the performance of security.
Yeah.
Because they've got all your information. Who's next? Red, orange sweater.
Thinking back to my own experiences about like reading something like Emily Oster, and that I just think a lot about the like illusion of control that happens sort of before you become pregnant. You think you can optimize your chances of conceiving, and then kind of the illusion of control, like one more scan or the outlet's off, or all of these ways in which technology or reading the right statistics are going to help you control the outcomes that are having the perfect baby. I'm just sort of curious, like how do you feel like that impacted your experience, or the way that the internet kind of fits into that universe of like, if I get the right formula, I won't have any bad outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's such an interesting figure because I like a lot of the work that she does. What she does is, sorry, did you want to?
Oh, sorry, Emily Oster. How do you feel about that work?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was really into the answer. I just wanted to know.
She's an economist who started writing baby books, and she like produces like reports that bring in like what actual like scientific you know data exists about whether you can actually drink any alcohol while you're pregnant or whatever. And I find her so interesting because like on the one hand, like having this data is so helpful, but then it's like there's still just not enough and there's too much at the same time. I was so interested because she just published a book last year called The Unexpected. And it's about, when your pregnancy does not go according to plan in some way. And I was like reading through the table of contents, and it covers a lot of prenatal conditions like in the pregnancy, but it doesn't cover any like fetal conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I just once again feel like, I don't know, whenever I read a pregnancy book, I'm like, I just feel like I had no choice but to go to the internet because they're not talking about the stuff that was relevant to me. I don't know. I have complex thoughts about her.
One more. Oh boy. All right. Standing in the back with the green bag and the Yankee. Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna come closer. I just had a question about mainly process, and I'm very curious because I'm trying to write nonfiction, and I'm curious about. I find myself like stopping when I'm writing. It's like this is too private. Like I'm scared to put this out there, but then it's what's gonna make the book. So I'm just curious how you like, if you did deal with this, and like how you kind of move past that emotion.
How did you deal with maybe writing or revealing too much about yourself, or how did you make the choice to do that in your process?
I think I was still writing under this cloud of denial that like it was a book and people were going to read it. I remember when my editor like put the first description of my book on Amazon or something, and it was before I was finished with the book totally. So I was like, don't tell people. They can't know about this. But then, there's stuff like in that description, it mentioned like the genetic condition that my son has, which I decided to like disclose in the book and talk about. And I was like, I just don't know about this. Like, I think the thing that's hard about it is that in that case, the consequences of that decision will not become clear to me for like many years. Because it will be if I'm not sure that my kids are going to be really like that interested in knowing about like what's in the book their mom read, but if they do,
if my mom was a writer, you better believe I'd gobble everything up. So I don't. Also, if you met y'all know.
I know.
They're gonna read.
I'm not gonna know for a while, and my husband's teaching him how to read.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
I know. Yeah.
What I do love though is that you do. I love. Okay. I mean, I can't reach the book, but there's a great tiny little interlude that is one of the funniest things in the book about. It's one line, and you're explaining Alma. you're reminding us that Alma is Alma and why Alma is Alma. But then there's a great line about your second child that is, I'm not even going to ruin it. Read the book. But it's one of the funniest things that in the book. But what I love and what I think is going to be easy for them is that you were writing about, I mean, I would assume that it will be easier for them knowing that you are writing about the experience of what you went through to bring them here, right? Or, you know, at least Alma. And I don't know, they're going to learn a lot about their mother and a lot about how fucked up the world is. So yeah, they need to read it.
I mean, I did the book. I think the reason that I wrote the book is because there were things that I felt and experienced that I was ashamed of. And I wanted to understand that better. And so putting that out there for my child to read someday, and when the things that I'm feeling concern him, is scary. But I also had this feeling that was like, this was an unproductive feeling, but it was like, what if someone took just this paragraph and like put it on Twitter? And now it's like, I don't read that anymore. So it doesn't really matter. But I had this sense.
It's useful exercise.
Yeah. I was like, well, when I read a book, I like the character to be complex and to make mistakes. But when people read about mothers, they don't like that. Like if they're a real person, they don't like that with moms. But
were you thinking about that as you were going?
Like, and eventually, once I realized that it was going to be a real book. But then, I don't know, I just decided that whenever I had a dilemma like that, I would just try to be honest, because at least like I knew that was some kind of defense, just to be as honest as I could be.
That is definitely coming through in this book loud and clear. Amanda Hess, Second Life.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. What's gonna happen? Oh, well, that's Tiffany's job.
Thank you everybody for coming out. Amanda will be personalizing books in that corner where my coworker is jumping. We do ask that you grab your stuff immediately because we do have to turn this back into a bookstore right away. But you're free to line up on this side of the wall. All the books are already pre-signed, so unless you want a personalization, that's where you'll line up. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming. Encourage folks in the live stream to buy a copy of the book. The link is in the description, and we have extra copies at the front as well. Thank you.
We did it!
Okay. I'm gonna take you to your note because I know everyone will want to say hi.
This is.
But they can talk to you in the
Thanks.
corner.
Okay.
I'm
gonna give this to Mark.
Okay.
Oh, that is not for. Okay. That was near the.